Hello humans, and welcome to my channel. My name is Slady, and today we're going to be covering a movie you probably didn't expect, the new Scooby-Doo movie called Scoob. As much as I normally cover horror movies or psychological thrillers to flesh out your understanding of where my criticisms come from, I'm going to be introducing quick movie takes on every genre under the sun. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of an animated kids movie fiend. I like almost all genres as long as they're done well. Horror and psych movies and shows just have more content to dissect, or have room for me to insert a new perspective on the story. If I'm doing this channel for fun, I might as well include everything. It's really sad when new creators like myself limit what they're allowed to do for the sake of a brand that they don't even have yet. So today we're talking about Scoob. And let me tell you, I love Scooby-Doo. I did as a kid and I still do as an adult. I watch Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island and Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost probably about once a year. I caught quite a bit of the old TV show episodes, but those are my go-tos. I haven't seen basically anything of the new Mystery Inc. animated series from a couple years back, but I did find the live-action movies pretty amusing despite the overacting and comedic mishits. The strange thing about Scooby-Doo is that although the franchise has years of downtime, where the hype from the latest project has died off and only the really hardcore fans are still watching, it never really goes away. Scooby-Doo is constantly getting shows and movie revamps. Every 2 or so years, there's a new Scooby-Doo project coming out, so it's impossible to let our beloved Mystery Incorporated team be forgotten, which I think is really interesting. Most children franchises don't have that sort of longevity to them. And the thing that makes Scooby-Doo so successful and staying relevant is that they recycle their patented a group of teens hunting mysteries with each member set in a specific archetype and team function, which are continuously reintroduced into time-relevant scenarios. Talking about Scoob, I'll do a non-spoiler review of the things I liked, and then a spoiler section of the few problems I had with it in case you decide to go watch it on your own. This adventure for Mystery Inc. involves an old villain character, Dick Dastardly, and his dog sidekick, trying to unleash Cerberus from Alexander the Great's vault of treasure so they can be rich. Dick's plans go awry, and he resolves that he needs to target Scooby-Doo to get what he wants. The Mystery Inc. gang is split up. After an argument over competence and worth to their business, Daphne, Velma, and Fred spend the movie trying to catch up to Shaggy and Scooby as they try to take initiative in solving the case themselves, and with the help of a new superhero taking the mantle of Blue Falcon, which was one of Shaggy's childhood icons. The gang's strength is tested in a variety of ways, and I honestly like the testing of their friendship dynamic. Scoob across rating sites averages about 5 or 6 out of 10, which isn't unfair, but I feel like critics had a problem with the movie for catering to today's youth too much. It's true that older iterations of Scooby-Doo didn't heavily rely on pop reference jokes, but there also wasn't the expectation that they should. We're in a weird time where kids' movies have transcended just kids, and adults expect to be equally entertained by the witty banter and plotlines. And I didn't have a problem with this. Scooby-Doo is supposed to change and evolve with each generation it's presented itself to, and the jokes in Scooby-Doo were acceptable and expected. A couple of them were really genuinely funny. The one about Tinder being a failed wood delivery app kind of caught me off guard. If you loved Scooby-Doo as a kid, it's a toss-up whether you'll love Scoob. Some say it's too much, some say it's not enough, and some say it's both at the same time. I'm not going to explicitly recommend Scoob, but I did enjoy it, and Scoob gets a C+. What I do recommend is Zombie Island. It's a classic, and it will never age. Now for spoilers on why Scoob, with the expectations of a dumb kids movie, couldn't claim a flat B rating from me. Although it was entertaining in and of itself, and I expect the stretching and changing of the Scooby-Doo formula, Scoob did one thing fatally wrong. It ruined one of its main characters. Fred. From its early iterations, the Scooby-Doo franchise has been taking priority away from Fred with each passing revamp. As this happened, it felt like a change in the right direction. They shifted some of the skills or tasks that Fred would dominate over to other characters. Daphne, who was once a bit of an oblivious socialite in need of saving, turned into the martial artist of the group to complement Fred's raw strength. Daphne also took on more planning roles to complement her relationship with Fred because he's the trap specialist. It made sense for them as a couple to come together into one full planning catch the bad guy process. They were both always represented as the faces of Mystery Inc. as well. And from earlier Scoob, Velma transformed from a quiet book nerd who sat back while Fred took initiative to an antisocial but capable technology whiz. This made sense in and of itself with the prominence of the internet. Velma had to learn to Google things instead of relying on old library books. It just didn't make sense in our climate anymore. These changes were fine. They made sense with the logical progression of our time, and the formula left us with each character filling out a very specific role in the team. But Scoob decided to say a big ol' fuck you to Fred. Fred did not occupy a niche that added value to the Mystery Inc. gang. He was basically useless. He handed over deconstruction of a killer robot to Velma, which in the movie was one of his only times he could have shined with a trapper expert engineering role, so that part of his character was written out, but you'd think they would have at least kept him as the role of the tank. Fred is introduced in the movie in a flashback as a literal white knight, busting into a haunted house in a suit of armor. But in real time, he contributes no protection or strength. There's a moment of hype where Fred finally pulls out his ascot and ties it around his neck before charging into battle. He just fucking screams and runs away. The only value he added to the entire movie was him pulling out a piece of paper with the answer to seal up the bad guy at the end that he was apparently holding on to the whole time, even though they could have really used the information. They made him a complete dumbass. Fred has always kind of had his moments, but not in that way. They've always been in a sort of lack of social understanding or empathy, which Daphne had full reign over. Fred contributed nothing. The only thing Fred did in the whole movie was be Daphne and Velma's driver, which, yes, was always technically also his role, but to boil him down to only that made him overly pathetic. Fred is supposed to be well-spoken, charismatic, and smart, but in Scoob, he's just some dumb prep kid who makes stupid comments and no good jokes. It was really disappointing to see a character that you grew up with so heavily underwritten. I liked the older shifts in power they gave the group dynamic, and I especially liked that Velma in Scoob was more ethnic than her previous versions because it aesthetically felt right. But this disgrace of a Fred was a bit too much. There's such thing as making room for other voices to be heard, but the writers overdid it. Fred wasn't encroaching on any other of the Mystery Inc.'s character development, he was simply written in to be non-consequential and useless. If we took Fred out of the movie, absolutely nothing changes. And there is the opposite of what the Mystery Gang is about. They are all supposed to play off of each other's skills, strengths, and weaknesses, and that doesn't work when one of the members is just a waste of space. The whole narrative of the movie explored Shaggy and Scooby's feelings of inferiority in the group, and acknowledging their worth even if it's mostly in their sheer luck and curiosity. The gang needs them, and somehow the writers took that core idea and decided that it doesn't need to apply to Fred too. That was my biggest complaint of the movie, and I didn't mean for it to turn into such an elaborate rant, but it's so disheartening when franchises Game of Thrones decide to just throw away their characters that they spent so long developing. The only other real complaint I had about the movie Scoob was the resolution at the end. Either Shaggy or Scooby had to sacrifice themselves and be locked away in Cerberus's vault to stop him from roaming the earth, and Shaggy took on that responsibility. We get a minute or two of sadness at Shaggy's loss before Velma says, "It's stupid Alexander would make a seal that would separate two best friends from each other." So Fred says, "There must be a back door." And then the statue magically appears before them with the inscription, "Our bonds will never break or bend, so my friend, it's time to return to your home." Considering the movie opened with Shaggy and Scooby meeting each other for the first time and Shaggy adopting him, it would make sense to draw out fans' emotional investment with Scooby having to travel back to where they met, alone, distraught, before we earn the payoff of Shaggy's escape. But literally, as soon as the statue appears, Scooby just says, "Please come home, Shaggy," and that's enough and Shaggy's back and everything is fine. It was a pretty meh way to end it. And if it was a solution that simple, it would have benefited the writers to have at least rhymed the inscription. Considering home wasn't referring to a physicality, another word or phrase would have worked just fine. So that was my much longer than expected review and criticism of the movie Scoob. So much for quick reviews. I'll have to work on that. If you watched to the end, thank you. If you've seen Scoob or have a love for the Scooby-Doo franchise, leave a comment below. Sharing a nostalgia trip is always fun. Okay, my name is Slady, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.